The original script for this was 8 pages long. 8 pages! For reference, the usual script is roughly 3 to 4 at most. I cut it down to 6, and then I cut it down again to like 5.5, so needless to say, I'm gonna be talking real fast. Hey y'all, I'm the Geek Apprentice, and yes, this video will contain spoilers for the story of Sword and Shield, or rather, I guess just Shield, because it's my personal review of the game, because I only bought Shield. Why Shield and not Sword? Galarian Ponyta. That's why. Ever since the name reveal for these two Pokemon games, I've been on the fence about whether or not I was going to purchase one of them. I'm not a turn-based RPG fan, but Pokemon are adorable. I had heard so many negative things, but at the same time, I should get them myself and make my own judgment. I really did enjoy Let's Go Pikachu, but didn't want to deal with random encounters again, yet I was looking forward to actually battling Pokemon to catch them. Needless to say, about a month after its initial release, I finally broke down and bought the game. I really did have a genuine interest, and by this point had heard a lot of positive things coming out about the game, and besides, I didn't want the negative Nancy's to sway my judgment. Before I get into the review, I do want to clarify a few things. First of all, this is a pretty simple review, just kind of some pros and cons, although I will say you might want to stay to the end to hear my personal opinion on some of the, I guess, hot topics concerning these games, if you will. Whatever. Second of all, this is an opinion. I don't know why we always have to say that, but again, it's an opinion. You may not agree. Take your negativity elsewhere. You're allowed to disagree, obviously, just don't be a poop about it. Next, my experience with the Pokemon series is as follows. I played Pokemon Yellow when I was pretty young, Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2, Pokemon Pinball, Hey You Pikachu, and of course, Let's Go Pikachu. I also love the anime. I watched the first few seasons growing up, and in the past year have been trying to watch all of them. I'm not very far, but I've enjoyed it, and I really love the very first film. So because my experience with the main series is relatively non-existent, I'm coming at this from a very different perspective. I do think my limited experience has kind of lent way to me enjoying aspects that perhaps longtime Pokegamers didn't, and this is because it was all new to me, so I didn't have anything to compare it to, really. Finally, I don't think I would have ever even considered getting this game were it not for my enjoyment of Let's Go Pikachu. I know those games have a lot of haters, probably from main series purists, but I am one of many who decided to take the plunge into the real deal Pokemon games because of what Let's Go introduced me to. So even if you didn't enjoy the games, which is totally fine, you should at least appreciate the fact that it brought in some new gamers, or in my case, old-time fans. Definitely playing on my Gen 1 nostalgia. We're all guilty of falling into it. Alright, we're going to begin with the things that I maybe didn't enjoy or felt could have been improved upon. I will say that a lot of these nitpicks can probably be summed up in one overall annoyance that I'm going to talk about at the end. So keep that in mind as I speed through them. While the character of Hop would eventually come to grow on me, in the beginning he was sadly the source of annoyance. This is a shocking negative to have, since you would think I would want the slow-paced beginning to understand the game better. However, the game is aimed at 10-year-olds, so I kinda don't need it. Hey, maybe the kids new to the franchise do need it. I just don't understand why my character wouldn't know where the Pokemon Center in her own home village is. I mean, really, logic people. The pace picked up later anyway, so let's move on. Alright, you knew this would come up, and while it wasn't a huge deal for me personally considering all of the parts I loved in this game, I cannot deny that certain graphics were pretty poor. Yes, the trees, especially up close, but even some of the animations I thought were kinda funny, especially for certain Pokemon moves. This is a very small thing for me, but dang did the frame rate drops come out of nowhere and spike when I activated online mode. It was super cool seeing other trainers around, but it was very stagnant and choppy. It just seemed weird that the online mode for this game was so funky, considering the online modes we have for other games which are great, like Smash, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and Splatoon. What do I mean by the Pokemon levels in the wild area? Well, if I understand correctly, in previous games you could catch a Pokemon of any level, assuming you managed to somehow do one that's way overpowered, considering your level, but you just couldn't use it. Basically, Pokemon that were really high level compared to where you were at, you kind of had to earn their respect by garnering gym badges. However, in Sword and Shield, you can't catch them, period. I found this incredibly annoying because in the beginning, you don't have Pokédolls, so you don't always get away safely, and therefore your Pokemon can just be trashed. It didn't make sense, and I do feel like Game Freak should return to the old way. I get it, you don't want us to be OP, but the old way seems to make sense. If we manage to catch a high-level Pokemon, great, but just don't let us use it until we've earned their respect. Another minor thing here, but it was sad to be halted every 10 feet it felt like in Pokemon Shield due to loading screens. Loading screen to get onto the bridge. I cross the short bridge. Another loading screen. Rides through a relatively short route. Another loading screen to get into the town. It was like 3 loading screens within 2 minutes. It was just a tad annoying. I know voice acting hasn't ever been a thing in the Pokemon gaming series, I don't count Detective Pikachu, but I can tell you that it wasn't in Zelda either until Breath of the Wild. While it wasn't always awesome, Breath of the Wild for me personally was greatly enhanced by it in certain cutscenes. I believe the same could have been said for Sword and Shield. Not every cutscene, mind you, but a few of the more major ones could have benefited by good voice acting. The beginning with Chairman Rose, the climax between Chairman Rose and Champion Leon, discovery scenes with Sonia, and a few others. I get that the Pokemon gaming series is not known for some huge cinematic cutscenes like perhaps Zelda or another franchise, but I do still think that the game and the story itself could have benefited from some good voice acting, or at least trying it. Now what about the Pokemon themselves? I know I might be somewhat alone in this, although I think Capt Burrison will back me up, and that is the old bit Pokemon sounds were garbage. Sorry, except no, I'm not sorry. Look, I get it, there's nostalgia there for many, but for someone coming back after so many years and is certainly not in a nostalgia bubble, well, not for that, hearing so many cool Pokemon sounds be interrupted by trashy Game Boy noises is jarring and kinda just sounds like poor quality. For a kid who hasn't played Pokemon before, this might seem really weird, unless they're not paying attention, or they're into retro games, or they know the old stuff from maybe their parents or older siblings. Now some might argue, that's their original sound, to which I say, seriously? They can update the graphics but not the sounds? Why couldn't they get like the voices used for maybe the anime or something? They may have had their reasons, but that's how it's always been? Doesn't cut it. For you, it might bring you back to your first moments playing Pokemon all those years ago, and that's cool and all, but from an outsider perspective, it just sounds like laziness. At least cutting the Pokedex had a somewhat decent reason, even if we feel like they didn't really follow through, but later. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. If you know me, you know I love customization. One thing I didn't like about Let's Go Pikachu is that our choices on the look for our avatar were limited. And while Sword and Shield got some things right in this department, the bike outfit was not one of those. Okay, maybe this has something to do with the UK, which Galar is based on, but it just looks dumb. I would understand just a helmet, but even that would have to be customized to be decent. The outfit just looks awful, and it doesn't make sense to have to change your entire outfit just to ride a bike. Maybe make it an option, but not mandatory. I know you can change the colors, but they don't look good. This sounds like a minor thing to gripe about, but honestly, I care more about this than I do tree graphics. One of the reasons I'm terrible with Pokemon names is because I love giving them adorable, geeky, or dumb nicknames. Yet, for some idiotic reason, a Pokemon that was obtained via a trade can only be nicknamed once, so you better be sure. Or, worse, if it already has a nickname from its previous owner, you can't change it, period. What's with that? The amount of Pokemon I have with weird, stupid names or random Japanese lettering for nicknames is astounding and annoying. I try to understand maybe a sentimental reasoning, like because you're not the original owner, who caught the Pokemon means the Pokemon can't respond to another name, similar to how when you adopt an older dog, you kind of usually have to call it by whatever its original name was. But why does this matter in a Pokemon game? Even if it's a friend who traded it, they gave it to you and you should be able to change the nickname. Simple as that. Again, this is another thing some might see as trivial, but it matters to me. I enjoy little things like this. Perhaps this will sound boring to some, but I would have loved it if we could have watched some of the gym battles. Like maybe Hops or the ones between the gym leaders themselves. Make them more cinematic with bigger move animations, you know? And I do mean this as an option, not mandatory. And especially for Hop, it would have been cool to see his reaction to losing some of those battles, though we see his reaction to losing to us a lot. I don't think he ever once beat me. Maybe for those gyms where Hop goes first, the trainer uses different Pokemon so you're not like too prepared when going into the battle, or don't let us see those at all and only let us see the ones where you go before Hop. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm wording what I want accurately, but maybe you see my point. I guess this kind of sounds like watching the anime, but in the game. They make the gym battles, especially in this game, seem like some huge event, which they are, and I'll talk about that later. Yet we never get to watch them. We watch our own, but I want to watch other people's, and in a more cinematic way, or at least have the option to. While I definitely have enjoyed Shield more than Let's Go, there are certain aspects I wish had been carried over. No, not the Pokeball throwing stuff, just no, gosh no. I wish they would have taken the time to make it so we could have a single Pokemon follow us like in Let's Go. I loved that feature, especially when we could ride them or attach ourselves to them like Snorlax. It doesn't have to be elaborate, just something. Sure, there are like 400 Pokemon versus the not even 200 in Let's Go, but come on. They already had the wild animation for most of the Pokemon, so this definitely should have been included. It was one of my favorite aspects of Let's Go, and I was so disappointed that it wasn't in Sword and Shield. That, in addition to the fact that we couldn't pet our Pokemon like we could pet our Pikachu or Eevee in the Let's Go games. Missed opportunity, Game Freak, come on. Alright, now we can put all of the negativity aside for a moment while I talk about the things I loved in Pokemon Shield. Aside from the horrendous bike outfit, the ability to make your avatar actually look like 10-year-old you was awesome. The clothing, hair, makeup, accessories, everything. There was even a somewhat curly hair option. That never happens for me. This is a quality of life thing that helped sell me on buying this game in the first place, and I love it. In the future, they definitely need to expound upon this, especially in the hair department. Like, please, long, actually curly hair. Please make that a thing. When I say new Pokemon, I mean both Gen 8 and all the Pokemon I didn't recognize, and even some I did. There are so many stinking cute Pokemon. That's partially how I decided my champion team, if I'm honest. Yes, there was some strategy, but that was only a single factor. I refuse to let my Yamper and Stuffle evolve because of it. Don't get me wrong, Boltund and Beware are cute too, but frankly, Beware scares me. Anyway, what's always kept me somewhat into the franchise was the cute factor of certain Pokemon, and they didn't disappoint in Sword and Shield. While I don't know a ton about the previous installments, one thing I do know is that they kind of lacked in the story department, some of them. However, I loved the story, and especially certain characters and their arcs in this game. I kept in mind that this was aimed at 10-year-olds when concerning certain bits of dialogue though. Hop being the younger brother of the champion Leon was a really cool aspect to me. It ended up making Hop's journey really enjoyable after the beginning, and I love that Leon was invested in your journey from the beginning as well. Beatty and Opal were great. I loved Marnie and especially Pierce as the rocker but also protective older brother. Sonia was really fun to follow, and that's just naming a few. Was it cheesy at times? Sure, of course, but I was actually curious about the characters and their respective paths, which made it so much more fun. Other than when online, the wild area was an awesome addition to the franchise, I think. It added something cool and new without changing the core of what Pokemon is. More on that later. The wild area was great for catching a plethora of different Pokemon, for grabbing items, and those really fun raids. I actually don't have too much to say on this except that I really hope Game Freak takes this concept further and improves upon it in future games. Y'all know I hate random encounters. It was a pointless gimmick that was only born out of the fact that they couldn't render Pokemon in the old games, and all it afforded us was stupid and copious amounts of grinding. Having the Pokemon actually walk among you made the world feel alive in Let's Go. I adored that. And I was initially worried about Sword and Shield because it said it was mixed. But I think they handled it well. They balanced both ideas in a way to satiate most level-headed fans who don't complain and whine over every little thing. In fact, they did it so well that I actually don't mind the random encounters in this one. Obviously, I'm only comparing to Generation 1, but dang were the gym battles 10 times more fun in this game. I loved that it was an actual event, each one of them. First of all, the puzzles to get to the leaders were way more creative and fun. Then there's the overall atmosphere of actually battling, which was amazing. The cheering, live screens, the music, it all added up to making it more epic. No matter how one might feel about Dynamaxing and Gigantamaxing, and I totally understand both sides, the gym battles themselves were way more fun than I ever remember. The Galar region had so many cool looking areas with great music to accompany them, but my top faves were Balinlia, and by proxy Glimwood Tangle, and Kirchester, or however you pronounce that. Beginning with the latter, I was in peak Christmas mode when I entered Kirchester, and thus the area put me in a giddy mood. The snow was beautiful, the setup of the village was great and boasted some of the best boutique clothing, Melody was a fun battle and character, and the music that was paired with the area was soothing to listen to. Now as I enter Glimwood Tangle, which was prior to Kirchester, but anyway, I immediately knew it was gonna be a favorite. Then and there, I loved it, which is ironic because it's 99% random encounters. Touching the large shrooms was a cool little feature, the Pokemon there are adorable, well, most of them like Ponyta and female Indeedee. And it led up to my other favorite gym area, Balinlia. I could totally live there. Kirchester being a close second, Balinlia was so incredibly beautiful and felt like a fairy tale. Not to mention Opal was hilarious. Didn't care for her gym battle that much, but her and the area of Balinlia were just so beautiful. I am a broken record, I know, but music is so important and Sword and Shield accomplished this very well. I was initially kind of put off because I knew it was going to be like rock, punk, metal music, which I cannot stand, and I knew I was going to have some lingering nostalgia for the Kanto music. But I was blown away. Okay, maybe not blown away, but I did enjoy it. I already mentioned the music of Kirchester, Balinlia, and Glimwood Tangle, but here are a few of my other favorites. As annoying as he could be in the beginning, I always looked forward to battling Hop because the music was so fun. The feel of the song makes you so happy and relaxed because you're just having a fun little match with your best mate. Oh, by the way, the dialogue really hammered it out on the British slang, and I loved it even though I didn't always understand it. The slumbering weald right from the get-go was pretty intriguing to me. Although the area was quite predictable story-wise, except for those weirdo hair-crazy brothers, I didn't see that coming and felt genuinely uncomfortable around them, I still found the area and especially its music so well done. Honestly, I'm not sure I would have enjoyed the area had it not been for its music. One of my favorite parts about it was how certain sounds were reminiscent of the calls of the legendary Pokemon Zamazentia and Zacian. Finally, of my musical favorites, the score for the gym leader battles was perfect. I always looked forward to the battles, but I began to most look forward to their final Pokemon because that's when the theme kicks it up 10 notches with the crowd cheering the theme and the overall vibe just getting you so pumped. Needless to say, I loved the music of Sword and Shield. Alright, this video is already pretty long, so beware with me as I try to get through these last few thoughts. Haha, so punny, beware, bear with me, beware with me. I want to address a few of the main critiques I've heard from the masses and my personal perspective on them from an outsider / sort of newcomer-ish perspective. I think I said perspective like 3 times, oh well. The Pokedex. Personally, I really didn't care that it was cut so heavily, but I know why that is. I would have been overwhelmed with that many Pokemon. I mean, I'm basically new-ish to the series, So I can get why from a sentimental and nostalgic level, seeing some of your favorites or many of your favorites nixed is kind of annoying. I mean, even some of my old favorites were nixed, like Bulbasaur. I also understand that many felt like the reasoning from Game Freak was kind of unfounded since they didn't really follow through with how the graphics turned out. They didn't really live up to the Switch standard. Thus, I totally get why some were kind of peeved by this, but I also think too many were acting like babies about it. Speaking of graphics, I mentioned earlier that a lot of my negative comments can be summed up in one overall annoyance, and here's what it is. Perhaps Game Freak just didn't really take advantage of the capabilities of the Switch. No, it's not the most powerful console out there, but it's certainly better than a 3DS, and I do agree with what many are saying in that this game was kind of like a high-level 3DS game rather than a normal Switch game. I love what we got, but I do think Game Freak would have benefited from delaying the games to make better use of the system to improve the graphics, animations, internet connection, and a few other things. So hopefully they take the critiques from kind and calm fans and apply them to the next few games. Lastly, I hear many complaining that the games aren't evolving enough, and I frankly disagree with this entirely. Hear me out. I agree with what Gerard the Completionist said. Now I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, Pokemon has like its own base meal formula. It works, but with each game you add new spices and flavorings. Some will turn out better than others. The base game doesn't need some huge overhaul. I mean, it's aimed at 10-year-olds. Rather, what they're doing and adding these different gimmicks, like them or not, is the right way to go, and I definitely think the wild area was one of the greatest additions. Franchises like Mario and Zelda are different. While they are for kids, they're not as directly aimed, and their core game mechanics lend way to the fact that they actually don't change that much, not being as noticed. Of course, anyone can enjoy Pokemon, but like I said, it's much more directly aimed at a specific target younger audience. Simple, with some nice spices and flavorings here and there. That's the right way to go. Quite honestly, if you didn't enjoy the games, that's fine, you don't have to, but crying and whining and shouting like a toddler isn't helping anything. You just sound like a bratty version of the kids this game is aimed toward. Maybe you just personally have outgrown it at this point, as difficult as that might be to wrap your head around. That's a genuine possibility. It happened with my brother. It's just a game. Calm down. If your happiness and sanity depends on how well a certain Pokemon game does, you kinda need to reevaluate your priorities and move on. Either don't play it or enjoy it for what it is. It's fine. Just be mature about it, though I do understand that the whiners are kind of the minority, but they're loud, so they make themselves known. Now, there are some legitimate complaints, and I think it's good to kind of make some of those known and heard so future installments can be improved. But if you want Pokemon to supposedly evolve and mature, then you need to make sure you've matured before you open your whiny mouth. Because if I were Game Freak, I'd ignore you. So shout out to those who actually sound like mature adults when they highlight some areas that can be improved. You guys are the real heroes. I probably didn't need to say all that, but anyway, burn over. Anyway, despite the things I maybe didn't like about the game, the positives outweigh the negatives for me personally. They have room to improve, like all games. It wasn't perfect, but I've had an awesome time with this game, flaws and all. I mean, at this point, I've had the game for maybe 3 weeks and I've already put almost 100 hours in it. Probably helps that my 2 jobs were on break. So it's an 8 or a 9 out of 10 for me. I loved it. I can't believe you're still here. That was a really long video, it felt like. So thanks for watching all the way to here. That's pretty cool. Be sure to let me know in the comment section below what your favorite Pokemon are, whether they were nixed in this game or not. They might appear again in a future game, you never know. Also, huge shout out and thank you to all my patrons like Lorulian Sheep, JokingBatman, Sushi Bandit, and Cheap Seats. Y'all's kindness and support is incredible. Thank you. Of course, if you did enjoy this video, maybe consider looking at other content of mine and seeing if you might want to consider subscribing. You never know. Anyway, that's all for today. Thank you for watching.